Happy Friday, everybody. This is your Hurricane Tracker video update for September 24th of 2010. We're tracking two tropical storms in the Atlantic Basin this weekend. We have Tropical Storm Matthew in the Western Caribbean and Tropical Storm Lisa in the far Eastern Atlantic. Over in the Eastern Pacific, there is a very weak tropical wave with about a 10% chance at development, and we'll let you know if anything becomes of that. Well, let's start with Tropical Storm Matthew this morning, as it is the storm closest to land. As of the 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time advisory, maximum sustained winds are at 50 miles an hour this morning. Matthew's moving to the west at 20 miles an hour. Matthew quickly formed yesterday into a tropical depression, and then yesterday afternoon into a tropical storm. Matthew will make landfall on the northern Nicaraguan coast sometime later today as a moderate tropical storm. However, wind shear from the northeast at about 10 to 20 knots is keeping Matthew from intensifying. So that is good news for our friends down in Nicaragua and Honduras. But Matthew will bring heavy rains, the threat of flash flooding, and the potential of mudslides, especially over the more mountainous terrains here in central and northern Honduras. And there are tropical storm warnings and hurricane watches here for Honduras and Nicaragua. Of main concern is the not a hurricane warning, but a hurricane watch from the northern Nicaraguan coast up through about the central Honduran coast. But this whole area, northern Nicaragua up through northern Honduras and even eastern Guatemala, you're all under a tropical storm warning, so expect sustained winds greater than 39 miles an hour. And like we said a few moments ago, expect very heavy rains this weekend, and the storm is projected to slow down, and that could easily bring anywhere from 6 to 15 inches of rain in this region. And right now, the National Hurricane Center track is showing that Matthew should stay over land, which is good news because that would weaken the storm. And there is a pretty good mountainous terrain here in Honduras, which would help Matthew to weaken even quicker into a tropical depression. And then sometime this weekend, Saturday night, Sunday morning, steering currents are expected to get relatively weak in this area, and the storm should slow down and move more towards the west-northwest or the northwest. But regardless, the Hurricane Center is pretty confident in Matthew staying over land at this time and weakening into a depression, but it will bring tons of rain to this region. Now, even though they're confident in the track, there still are some different scenarios that could play out. So I want to spend a couple of moments on this map I've prepared here. First, here's the Caribbean oceanic heat content. That basically means in these darker red and orange shaded areas is where the warmest seawater is, and it does go pretty deep. So if Matthew is able to get back out over the Caribbean, it could strengthen fairly quickly back into a tropical storm or even a hurricane. But the key to Matthew's long-range track depends on how it interacts with the tropical wave over in the Eastern Pacific. You know, if that Eastern Pacific tropical wave does develop, it could help maybe to pull Matthew a little more to the west. And there's also going to be a trough of low pressure coming south over the United States, and that could help to draw the storm a little more to the north, but it is going to definitely help to weaken steering currents in this area. And just want to emphasize any small change in Matthew's track could make all the difference as to whether it dissipates or re-strengthens to a tropical storm or possibly a hurricane. Now, the green arrow is where we're fairly certain the motion is going to continue here over the next 24 to 36 hours on a general west to west-northwest track. The blue line is the official track from the Hurricane Center, and the orange and red arrows indicate two different scenarios that could play out. The first one here is a lot of computer models want to just continue taking Matthew westward over the southern Yucatan Peninsula. And of course, that would weaken it into an open wave and it would eventually just fizzle out. But there are a couple of computer models that want to turn Matthew more towards the north and even northeast back out into the Caribbean, which would be the worst of the two scenarios because it would allow Matthew to re-strengthen, and it could maybe allow Matthew to possibly get into the southern Gulf of Mexico and be lifted northward by the trough of low pressure coming south out of the United States. And that would obviously pose a threat for someone in the eastern Gulf Coast, anywhere from Florida through about Louisiana. So if you live in that part of the U.S., pay close attention to Matthew over the next few days, as the track is highly uncertain, as not all computer models are in good agreement at this time. But the Hurricane Center is going with a blend of these two options, kind of right down the middle, with Matthew fizzling out here early next week over the Yucatan Peninsula. But, Matthew will definitely bring a lot of rain to Central America, some flash flooding. So that is a very grave concern for our friends who live down in this area, especially since later this weekend, Matthew will slow down. And anytime a tropical system slows down, there's a greater chance for heavy rainfall. So anywhere from 6 to 15 inches are definitely possible here in northern Central America this weekend. So please pay close attention, and we'll definitely come back to update you as often as we can with the latest ongoings with Matthew. Tropical Storm Lisa continues to churn out in the far eastern Atlantic. Has sustained winds at 45 miles an hour this morning, moving to the north at 7 miles an hour. Overall, satellite presentation looks fairly good at the moment, but upper level wind shear is expected to increase out of the west to about 20 to 45 knots by Saturday night, and this high shear is going to be capable of just destroying Lisa and shredding her apart. So Lisa should continue to move to the north and eventually dissipate due to the high wind shear. So Lisa will not be a threat for anybody, and the computer models for Lisa are in good agreement at this scenario. Before we let you go, let's take a look at the satellite imagery animation for both of these storms. Here's Tropical Storm Lisa on the right, obviously a much smaller and less powerful storm than Matthew, and she'll just continue to move north. Tropical Storm Matthew, again, yesterday quickly strengthened, and thanks to upper level wind shear this morning, is keeping Matthew from reaching hurricane strength. But a very well organized system, lots of tropical moisture, and that is all heading right towards Nicaragua and Honduras, and eventually Guatemala and Belize. And that will conclude our video update for the day. If you would like audio updates on the go, please subscribe to our brand new Hurricane Tracker audio podcast in iTunes. Just search for Hurricane Tracker and subscribe to it. And that way you can get your updates on the go to your iPhone, iPod Touch, or iPad. And most importantly, thanks everybody for being a Hurricane Tracker customer, and we will be back to talk with you either later today or tomorrow morning to give you the latest updates on Matthew. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody. Have a great weekend.